Hi, welcome to Preps Plus Podcast, episode 19, brought to you by Sterling Auto Group. I am Joshua Hart, sports editor here at the Daily News. I'm here with Jason Leskiw, Preps reporter.
Hey,
What's
up?
We are here to break down, all of last week's action, including some very notable wins, as well as break down this week's football to come. We're in week 7, so moving quite along with the season, nearing playoffs here, and then we'll hopefully get into a couple of the other sports that we haven't gotten the chance to touch on yet. And we'll also have an interview with Kelso running back Max McDaniel, who has stepped up in a big way this season after A.J. Hoggett went down, and even before then, he's been an excellent running back since last year. So Jason has an interview with him on this podcast. So that's what's to come. We will jump right into it. Starting off with the big one last week, Mark Morris snapped its 15-game losing skid with a huge win over over Ridgefield last week, 30-27. Dawson Fritz led a throwing-based attack, and Perkins said they wanted to throw, or they did, they threw more than he'd like, but they didn't have any backs left. A lot of injuries took their toll on that one, but it was Dawson Fritz was just a warrior out there. Perkins has called him such pretty much all year, but there was a certain play on fourth down when he was going in for the what looked like the game-winning drive until a Ridgefield kickoff return went 86 yards to the house, and it was fourth down and 8, I want to say, and it looked like they had stuffed him behind the line. He was going to get sacked, and then somehow he scrambles to his right, weaves around a couple defenders, and works his way to the first down, and ends up converting for a touchdown a few plays later. And then he obviously pounds in the big one late along with the 2-point conversion, and Timur Barashev recovers the onside kick, and Mark Morris walks away winners. That was a great game. I can't praise Mark Morris enough for that win. I've said all season that they're playing a lot harder than last year. They just have a certain mentality of work ethic that is good to see, and knew they were going to come away with a win. Eventually, I did pick them in Pigskin Profits, so right on A+ to me on that one. I'll give myself props.
I think Red Bacchus also picked Mark Morris.
Yeah,
I think that's like the first time all season he's picked Mark Morris.
No, he's picked him every week. Our celebrity guest in Pigskin Profits has stuck with his team and finally got the reward in that. Although I'm not doing so hot in Pigskin Profits.
You are not. That is accurate.
Yeah,
Josh is in last place, people.
Help
the guy out
by a long ways at this point. 43 and 42, not good. And we're still trying to catch you guys, the people. And so if you guys would stop voting so well on Twitter at TDN Preps, we would appreciate it. Another big one last week, not such a glorious ending for our local team. Walk me through that Kelso overtime defeat and what you saw from the Highlanders.
I saw a lot of good. The most impressive thing to me is how well they maintained their positive attitudes. They were really good, and it's not especially early. It wasn't on them. They were playing really well. There were several, and I hate to bag on officials.
They're Clark County officials. It's okay.
Well, this was a game where you could easily bag on officials. They were not very good, and it really hurt Kelso. Now there were some instances where Kelso failed to convert at the goal line, so it's not like the officiating, was the one thing that caused them to lose the game. They had opportunities that they missed, but there were about 5 penalties that, in my opinion, were not should not have been called on Kelso, and then one other that was clearly a penalty on Mountain View and was not called on Mountain View, where a Mountain View player ripped a Kelso's player's helmet off and then threw him 10 yards. after the whistle. And
You're telling me that's not legal?
as far as I'm no expert here, but yeah, no, the officiating was really bad, and there were a few instances where Kelso, say McDaniel gets I think there was one where he had a 35, 40-yard run called back due to something ridiculous, and so then it goes from first and 10 from the 25-yard line to first and 20 from Kelso's own 20, and what do you do from there? So yeah, there were some things that I think a lot of teams would have responded poorly to, and don't get me wrong, it clearly bothered the players. It definitely bothered the coaches. They certainly let the officials hear about it, and they were one coach was given a final warning, saying let's say one more thing and you're gone. But the second half, they came back and really didn't let the stupid stuff get to them, and they fought it out, tied it with a couple minutes to go. Max McDaniel had a terrific run from a little bit more than 20 yards out, and he effectively tied the score on that run. Quentin Nelson needed to convert on a 2-point conversion, and he did. A little scamper there, quarterback keeper. And then it goes into overtime, and Mountain View wins there on their first offensive try after picking off a Quentin Nelson pass. But it was a game where it was anybody's game the entire time, and Mountain View has won that league quite a bit. So, and they're a very good team, and Kelso proved that they can compete with the very best.
Yeah, I mean, a lot closer than last year's game, but I think last year's game just kind of got out of hand, in a weird way, quickly. So, I think Kelso somehow has even taken a step forward, and I think that shows against Mountain View. They're just as good of a defense, if not better, than last year. That running game is so powerful, and you have to wonder what they can do when they get AJ Hoggett back for the playoffs. They made it to state last year and lost to Meadowdale in a heartbreaking way. So yeah, you have to like Kelso's chances, and I think it really showed in that game against Mountain View what they can do. So it'll be interesting to see how they move forward. While we're on the topic of Kelso, let's talk about you sat down with Max McDaniel. You're working on a story that'll be out in Friday's prep kickoff section about running backs stepping up when their quarterbacks go down. Tell me a little bit about what McDaniel had to say.
Well, one thing that he kind of made sure to point out is that Kelso is a run first team, and so losing AJ Hoggett is a big deal. There's no question. He's a terrific arm, and he's an experienced player. He's been with the Highlanders varsity since freshman year, and that makes a huge difference. But the run game has always been number one for Kelso, and the one the chain mover, the conversion method of choice. So having Nelson. With that said, having Nelson there, he's very fast. He's certainly more mobile than Hoggett, and that can play. I think, especially once Nelson gets a few more reps, that experience will carry over. He'll be able to really maximize his mobility to scramble. Interestingly, Kelso did not give up. Quentin Nelson was not sacked against the best team in, or what's supposedly the best team in the Greater St. Helens 3A, and probably will finish as the best team in the Greater St. Helens 3A after this past weekend. And I think that's that's something that really means a lot. when a quarterback, whether it's because the offensive line did well, or because the quarterback was able to scramble, or because they ran a lot, which was certainly a factor. When you're able to not allow sacks, when the playoffs come around, that matters, and I think that matters about just as much as not turning the football over. So that's something that'll make a difference, and that's a factor that Max McDaniel just touched on.
And we'll jump right into that interview that Jason had earlier with Max McDaniel.
Welcome back to Preps Plus podcast, brought to you by Sterling Auto Group. I'm here with Max McDaniel, Kelso running back, coming off a pretty big game. I think it was 243 yards.
Yes.
Yeah, so it just balled out this past week. Looking to finish the season strong, so welcome. Tell us a little bit about this last game against Mountain View.
It was hard played by our teammates. I mean, I could have asked for more. I don't think anyone could have. It was a little rough on the officiating, which kind of came down to a few major key plays get called back, or just there's a lot on us and not a lot on them.
Right. There was definitely a disparity there as far as penalties. Also, one thing, and just before we started recording, I was asking Max about this. He had a 24-yard, I believe it was called, run where you had 7 guys hanging out off you about at the 10-yard line or so, trying to drag him down, and he powered through them. And that was this is a game that went into overtime, and that was the game-tying touchdown, or the touchdown that set up a 2-point conversion, which tied up the score. What goes through your mind after you see that on tape?
It was a good game. I mean, we all had good games. It was really well blocked, actually, downfield. Not many people recognize, but there's a few teammates that key blocks in there that got guys off me. It wasn't just me doing all the work. It was several other guys downfield blocking. It's awesome to see that in your team.
Okay. And what did you see from the team in general? Pass game, blocking, defense?
As in Kelso?
Yeah, as in Kelso.
Our line did really well up front. Our outside guys could have asked for more. I mean, there's always going to be missed blocks and guys that aren't. It happens. You run tons of plays a game. I mean, some of them are going to slip, but our line did an amazing job.
Okay. And as far as dropping a game to Mountain View is obviously big. I think based off the score you guys had against it last year, some people I know expected a more lopsided game or a wider margin of victory. Ironically, it was funny, I had been called not quite a fool, but I thought you guys had a better chance than I think a lot of people did coming into this one. And in my opinion, the officiating, as you sure would agree, made a huge impact on the game. But then also the one thing I noticed, what was your take on the red zone, some of the red zone drives there?
I mean, we definitely had the run game over them. We threw quite a bit in the red zone, though. That definitely came down to it. And then there was one point we were on like the 3-yard line and we tried to run an outside play that failed. But I mean, it's all like you got to get them off there. They're going to expect the run in that situation, so you got to keep them on their toes. You just can't keep running the same play out.
Right. Give what the defense, or take what the defense gives to you. Right.
Yeah.
What was the toughest part of this last game for you?
I actually don't know. I mean, it was definitely like just kind of like battling. They're a physical team, very physical team. So it was more like are we gonna do this? Are we gonna keep playing through? Because at halftime we came in, we were a little bummed out because we were down, and we hadn't gotten anything yet, and everyone was kind of low, and it was really worrying at first. But our coaches came in, talked, everyone got hyped up. We came out for the next half perfectly and executed everything well.
Okay. One thing also that I was curious to hear your take on is you guys have coming last year an experienced offensive line. And this year, you guys had a lot of clearly talented players, but without a whole lot of starting experience. How do you think those guys have stepped into that role?
Honestly, they filled their spots greatly. I've been really surprised. Well, not surprised, but like just happy about how they've been playing. Like they really filled the role of Colton, and Nick, and Tyler McInich, and all those guys. They filled in pretty well, and I mean, it's more than you can expect from them too.
Okay, we actually had Colton and Nick in last spring on one of our first podcasts. It's funny because our focus, our emphasis was shot put and just track type stuff. And if you just look at it, we're not track guys, we're football players, And clearly, just you look at them and you know they're hard to replace.
Yeah.
So with you as a running back, what are the differences that you found with that new line? Is there anything as far as different types of creases to look for? Different.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly patience. Like, I mean, they might not know their assignments as well as Colton and Nick did, but they still get them done. It just takes a little more time. So if you wait it out, it'll open up.
Okay.
And they fill in great. Like, I mean, obviously our line's not as big as it was last year in size. So I mean, as a smaller line though, we're a little quicker. So it also helps there too. They've done a great job.
Okay. And Kelso, I think in the last 9 months or so, we've talked about this a lot, where Kelso's in a lot of different sports has really been climbing to that upper echelon of ability. We talk about volleyball this year, softball, the baseball team made a pretty good run. Just everywhere, and even outside, in the classroom, Kelso had some pretty high marks. Have you felt, in your time at Kelso, that the program's been growing in any way, shape, or form, or really, have there been changes that you've noticed that have made a difference?
Well, honestly, when you're going into it as you get older, it's like kind of looks like it's going downhill. But once you can't really tell until you get into seasons for things. Like in football, we didn't know what to expect for the year. Like we just weren't sure what was going to happen. But then we obviously have the athletes to do it, and like that's every other sport. It's just like, and as you get older, you can obviously you're comparing yourself to other people which aren't as big as you get. Mm-hmm. They'll be in the same spot when they're seniors, but like it really comes down to like our wrestling team. Our wrestling teams, they've been really good since about freshman, like my grade's freshman year. Mm-hmm. But they've always been there. But like football especially, it's weird. It's like hard to see it as you get older.
Okay.
Because it's hard to see because you don't think of yourself as being in that same position as the guys under you.
Right. Gotcha. Is it also, do you, growing up to, like, say, your freshman year, did you really look up to some of the juniors and seniors on the different teams?
Yeah, definitely in the weight room now.
Okay.
That's definitely gave me more motivation to work out and keep grinding in there.
Okay. You guys compete pretty hard in the bench press and all that stuff, I guess?
Yeah, all power lifts.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny. I was joking with Josh a month or two ago. It's like every time I call Amrine, they're just in the weight room. It's like during the summer, it's what it seemed like. So with where, and I know I kind of asked you this Friday night, where does Kelso football go from this last week, and how do you expect the team to respond?
I think respond very well, because I mean that's an eye opener for everyone on our team, saying we just competed with one of the best in our league, possibly top state rated as well. Mm-hmm. I mean that shows that we can compete with any other team that comes against us.
Okay, and was that something that the coaches talked about also this week?
Yeah, definitely.
Was there anything they pointed out that you guys did really well, I guess?
Not really. They just focused on the team in general. So
okay. And you guys have AJ coming back, it looks like, at some point in the next couple of weeks. Is that still the case?
Yeah, hopefully soon. I mean, you can't expect him. It's all obviously
right. Injuries are injuries.
Yeah, you don't know what to expect until it actually comes down to it. But he's been walking around fine. I don't know. He'll probably be back soon.
Okay. he was throwing the ball real well. It looked like at halftime with Quentin. And,
I don't think he's lost his arm at all.
no, he is not. Certainly not. So what's when you lose a quarterback, especially one as talented as AJ? This isn't a knock on Quentin by any stretch. He's obviously got talent, but AJ is a next level arm.
Quentin's definitely, he's younger. I mean, he hasn't had the experience. AJ's been on varsity since he's a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
He has the experience over Quentin, which Quentin is just starting to more developed as a quarterback.
Okay.
Over these weeks, you can definitely see a difference.
Okay. Just his natural improvement. And stuff like that.
Just how he executes things and everything
Okay.
else.
How does a team? How do you feel? Actually, let me backtrack a little bit. First, when AJ got hurt and aggravated that injury he had, what did it feel like for you? And how did the team feel in your opinion?
We were a little unsure of what was going to happen because we hadn't seen Quentin in a game. I mean, we've seen him a couple times in lower situations.
Mm-hmm.
But we hadn't seen him in action in a game. We've seen him in practice. He's an athlete, of course. We hadn't seen him perform in a game. And AJ, he's kind of hard to replace. He's a very good. He executes everything very well. You can't ask more of a quarterback.
Mm-hmm. So let me see where on the spectrum is it to lose a guy like that? Is it devastating? Is it a more minor setback? Where does it fall in your opinion on that spectrum?
Well, I mean, Kelso's more of a run-heavy team in those situations, so it wasn't totally oh, we're not going to win another game, but it was definitely how is this going to affect our playoff runs? How is this going to affect our postseason, or even our harder games in our league?
Okay. What did Coach say to you guys that next Monday or Tuesday when you guys all got together after he was determined that he was going to miss some time?
He just explained the situation to us and showed us that AJ might be gone, but Quentin is going to fill in and he's going to do his best job to keep our team in line. And he did. In my opinion, he did great.
Okay. He's obviously got some wheels too. I noticed.
Yes.
Yeah, he was keeping up with you on the outside. That outside option with the little shovel.
Yeah.
How was that a play you guys were running with AJ too?
The lead?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay.
That's been kind of a play we've ran for. That's just been in Kelso for whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Since ice cream.
Yeah.
All right. What does that do for you guys as offense, having someone who's more mobile and opens up that part of the game?
Say vocal?
Mobile.
Oh, I think so. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, my congestion's kind of still there.
Well, I mean, yeah, he definitely can run the ball. I'd say just a little better than AJ. AJ's definitely got the arm and the accuracy over him, but Quentin's definitely a quick kid. He's very athletic. I mean, it really opens up another door to where we can run those play fakes and go. It really gets, after a while, it really gets the defense fighting on our play action, and he is able to run, which is awesome. He can get 15, 20 yards on a good run. It's cool to see. I mean, it's different, too. It's hard to adjust to at first, but I feel like as it went on, we definitely got used to it.
Okay. What's been his biggest run in the season? Has there been one that's really stood out to you?
I think he had a 25. He had a 20-yard run against Mountain View. I think that was pretty big. It was. I think we're at the 15.
Right, backed up after there was a punch or something like that.
Yeah,
Kick
something
off.
like that. And he got us the first down, which was awesome. And then there was one late in the game. He also got us the first down. I was really proud of him for.
Okay. What about for you? Is there a run that you're really proud of, or has really stood out for you personally also?
Well, I think the run against Mountain View is pretty cool. But I like going for shorter runs, but with more meaning. So just getting, my coaches always told me, it's 4 to 6 yards of plays. Can't ask for more. It's perfect. So I've been focusing more on middle run plays as in last year. It was more outside run.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know, the middle has definitely been a different kind of kind of moving into something else.
How tough? I think a lot of people who've never played running back have difficulty appreciating how difficult it is to get in between, four massive dudes. You got two offensive linemen, two defensive linemen, and just sneaking through those guys when there's not always a big hole. What's your technique to doing that? Do you have kind of a...
Well, I mean, the plays are designed to open up, obviously. So if you give it the time to develop, the play to develop, it'll be there. It's just awareness. You have to see where it's opening. You need to see who you're going to go against next. So if a middle linebacker gets through, you're going to have to try to find some way to avoid him or go through him. You just have to have the awareness.
Okay.
I don't think a lot of people see that in a running back. They think just getting the ball and run.
Right, where speed is everything, kind of thing. What about for you when a hole that's supposed to be there isn't there, and you got one guy coming off the edge, and you're limited as far as where you can go and kind of run off to? Is there what's something you've had success with in that situation?
Like troubled situations, like nothing's there.
Yeah.
I usually just lower my shoulder and go as far as I can. I mean, it's better to get 2-3 yards than negative. So, I mean, just get as many as you can. Get on the lineman's back. That always works, too. Because, I mean, the big boys are going to protect you.
Right.
Kind of run through the hole.
There you go.
Works well.
Go like a horse or something. Yeah. And kind of lastly here, what would you guys get AJ back? And I know I think week 9 was the initial timeline that we had heard. And what's the expectation? Is Kelso a championship caliber football team?
I think we can definitely. I mean, last year, I feel, if I'm going to go back to last year a little bit, we definitely could have made it a lot deeper into state than we did. I mean, I feel like we can be top 4 just by that one game. I mean, I think those are the same skill guys is what I'm getting to. So, we have the same backfield as we did then. And we also have linemen that fill their spots greatly. I mean, I think we can definitely do just as good, if not more, this year.
Okay. All right. Thanks for tuning in this segment here with Max McDaniel. I'm Jason Leskiw, and also thanks again to Sterling Auto Group.
All right, we're back. One thing I'd like to, before we get off of Week 6's games, is applaud the defensive work of a lot of our teams. We had 4 teams hold offenses without any points. Kalama, yes, it does say 35-2, but so that defense holds them without points. You had Toledo winning over Mossy Rock 50-0. 50-0. Toutle Lake's defense stepping up this week. And that Toledo game, 11 total yards they allowed.
That's right.
11. That's one first down. I bet you that. I wonder if they even got a first down.
I don't think that would have been a first down. There's no way.
So that's great performance from the Toledo. And then Toutle Lake shutting out Winlock 33-0. Rainier shutting out the Dalles 46-0. And then, Kelso, in previous weeks has had 3 shutouts. So you have a lot of great defenses in the area right now.
Yes, you do.
And Clatskani's defense was huge as well, and win over St. Mary's 26-7, with a couple turnovers forced as well in that one. So hats off to last week for the defenses. Some great performances there. I'd like to jump into some of the other sports that we've had a chance to get out to. Jason covered girls swimming last week, and so that was a lot of fun for Jason, I'm sure, to get out to the Kelso Swim invite. But I'd like to start with girls soccer, and you've gotten out to some girls soccer matches this year. Who's looking good as playoffs approach here at the end of the month?
Ari Long, that's one school that's been doing good. I think they're expected to do pretty well. Exactly where they would rank was a question, and they're slowly moving up there in the GSHL 2A, and we'll see. It looks like they're going to make the postseason.
It's a tough GSHL too
Yeah.
this year. It's getting crowded there outside of, I think that the top two teams, I think you have like 4 teams then tied for like third or close
Correct.
to it.
Right. And then Mark Morris is also fighting for a spot there, so that'll come down to the wire.
That Civil War at the end of the season probably have a lot on the line.
I really expect that will be the case. Yeah, I mean, if Mark Morris wins, I think it's like 2 of their next 3, 3 upcoming games. That it's going to come down, or it very well could come down to that. Obviously, other teams have to win or have to lose, and so. But Mark Morris is in a spot that I think at this point they're pretty happy with.
Yeah. Kalama also looking pretty
Yeah.
impressive. You had to wonder, how they would move on from the 37 goals of Natalie Coleman now at Centralia College. And their offense hasn't been stellar at times, but when you have a freshman up top there who has still scored the amount of goals that Melanie Martinez has this season, you got to be pleased with that. And then that defense is just incredible. Emily Mickelson, reigning Defensive Player of the Year for the Central 2B League, is one of the best high school defenders I've seen. And then Mary Morrell has really stepped up as a goalie, in Kalama. And that game against Adna last week, that went to the shootout, 0-0 draw, and then goes to the shootout. And as John Bates will say, once you get to the shootout, it's kind of a crapshoot. So they ended up losing that one. But it'll be interesting to see how that district plays out with Life Christian and Kalama and Adna all at the top of that. You have to think one of those teams probably going to a state title game. So. Interesting to see, but I think Kalama's in a good spot right now. And then Kelso Soccer was on an incredible run there, and then slipped up against Mountain View. But they've really had a fantastic season since a couple of early struggles. I know you've talked with Kamal a few times. What's he saying about this group?
He's really happy with the way that they've progressed as athletes. Kamal is a tough coach. He's a guy who, will be on the critical side at times. And this year he's been extremely, you talk to him after a game and he's just really happy. And that says a lot about how well Kelso has done. And he's taken it. I think he's at the point where he's taken it really game by game because he recognizes how well the team's performed, and so look for them to make a run. Certainly, they're a team that I don't think you can count out, and I don't say this about many teams come state tournament time. That they're a team that has what it takes, I think, to go the distance. It's just a matter of making sure they do what they do well and those sorts of things. So,
hopping over to the volleyball side of things, I went to Castle Rock's game against La Center last night, and the Rockets are pretty good.
Very, very good. They're very, very good.
That's their first win over La Center since 2014, and La Center obviously the class of the Trico for the past few years. Castle Rock's offense, though, is just so diverse. From Anna Dolan and everything she does well to Zoe Noggle, who's just fantastic middle blocker. She had 12 blocks against La Center. She can, she just with that long arms can really just put some balls in position where really impossible to stop. And then Logan Golden too, a sophomore who can pick up 20 kills on any given night if she's on her game. They have a freshman setter and Renee Holter, who's pretty good, and Rachel Anderson was huge. I mean, that's just such a deep team, and that's what Gina Bays has been saying all year is that there's no drop off. There's so many players that she can plug in there that can do so well, and it's hard to defend a team that has one dominant hitter like Anna Dolan.
Right.
When they have 3 that good,
Yeah.
it is making it near impossible for anybody to stop them.
Yeah, and I think one thing that sets them apart from the rest too is just that they have 3, 4, maybe 5 hitters that can go up there. They're not even hitters, a lot of them, but they can go up and get above the net and work as hitters, and that's a luxury that few teams will ever have, I think. So they're the team to beat. I think they're right about the best volleyball program in our area, certainly.
Yeah, and like I was telling you the other night is, it'll be. I think they're right now the top team in the district. I think they're the favorites right now for a district title. Montesano is always tough, La Center. But I think they're the favorites, and then, who knows what can happen when you match up with the Linden Christians of the world. So, I think Castle Rock's the real deal this year. Kalama's also been pretty strong in a crowded Central 2B league when you have, Kalama, the reigning champs. Then you have Mossy Rock, who the reigning runner-ups, and then you have Napa Vine, who's ranked number 1 in the state. Wakaikam and Tudor Lake, just a very deep league. But Kalama holding tough in there. And then Woodland looking like the GSHL 2A favorites right now. They still have one more game against Ridgefield, but certainly looks like they can make a deep run behind a new coach and several new faces in there. So it's been cool to see them pick up right where they left off as state runner-ups.
Yeah, and Jenny O'Neill has really proven her, just showing exactly how good of a coach she is. I mean, she lost a ton of talent this year, and or this past year, and they're not that far behind from where they were.
Yeah, I mean when I came back from the Monarch Challenge, I said I think Jenny O'Neill's the best volleyball coach in the area.
Yeah,
that's no offense to any of the other volleyball coaches, but I mean, she lost 4 incredibly talented players. 3 of those are at college somewhere with 3 different sports: 1 volleyball at LCC, one at basketball at Great Falls, and 1 track at University of Arizona. So, I mean, you take 3 collegiate athletes off of a 2B team, and then to go and nearly win the Monarch Challenge against 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A schools, with an entirely new bunch. Like, I don't know the magic that she sprinkles on the Chinooks, but like, that's incredible. They have 9 players in their entire system. And they're competing. It's incredible. So there's a reason she won that All-Star Coach and got her program 5,000 last year.
That's right.
And what was that? Preps Plus podcast episode 4 or 6 or something?
Pretty early on. Yeah.
Right on. Going into, we'll hop back into football. Going into this week, we have a few different matchups. You're going to go down to that Washougal Woodland contest. What do you look from that GSHL 2A battle with, a Woodland team that's been inconsistent, but, still has the inside edge to a playoff spot here?
I'm still looking for that consistency. And, I keep saying it, like, they have the talent. They have the talent. They can beat you a million different ways. But they just got to put it together. And this is a point in the season where if they don't put it together now, then they're just not going to, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big one as far as you do not want to get into that 4th spot of the GSHL 2A because you're going to end up going to face Tumwater in the crossover. And you don't want to face Tumwater in the crossover. You don't really want to face WF West either, but it's slightly better than Tumwater. So an important one for Woodland this week at home against Washougal. What I really enjoyed seeing last week, Wyatt Harsh, after his game, which was a disappointment for him with 4 interceptions, he went on Twitter and said that one was on me.
Right.
And when you have a quarterback of his stature that gets the attention that he does, for him to take that blame and say, hey, this one's on me, boys, let's go get him next week. I think that says a lot about his character, and I think that's the only way for the team to, move forward from that. that overtime loss to River, and get back on the right track that I think we have all been waiting for the past couple of years to really see Woodland flourish.
And that's the type of person he's just super down to earth.
Yeah. A couple other big games this week. On the coast, we have PL Willapa Valley against Ilwaco. What are you looking for from that game that is an important one as far as the coastal division goes, and Ilwaco's kind of only chance to try to get back into the top spot of that division?
I think Ilwaco is going to really need some breakaway runs. That's been kind of their Achilles heel is, they can get loose, find open space, but then finishing a 50-yard run or something like that, which is something that program really needs. Probably one or more a game to really succeed, over the course of a season. So finishing those breakaway runs, and whether it's by sheer speed and finding the right area of the field where the PWV doesn't have a chance to get you, or whoever they might be playing, or getting extra blockers downfield, even just to run behind and prevent would-be tacklers from making the tackle.
And then in town, we have Prairie at Kelso, Ridgefield at RA Long. I'm still debating which one I should go to, but I think I'll end up at Ridgefield RA Long as both those teams try to stay in that GSHL 2A playoff race. RA Long has struggled since a 2-1 start. What do they have to do to get back on track?
They got to get their heads back on straight and regain that kind of confidence that I think was helping them succeed early. Confidence is something I think is really undervalued at least to a point. There's a difference between cockiness and confidence, but having that what's confidence in your ability is something that I think really carried them along, and it's something that I think all winning teams have, and it's something that they're going to need to regain.
That one should be interesting. Definitely a game for RA Long that they absolutely need to win, and then then they can hope for something down the stretch to get them into the playoffs. But this is a must-win situation for them to stay in that playoff hunt. But it is just nice to see RA Long and Mark Morris both, at least talking about, hey, this is a possibility after what happened last year. It's nice to see both the hometown teams being competitive. And then Prairie Kelso, last year, that was one of Kelso's shutouts, and I could see it happening again.
Yeah, Kelso should dominate that game. Even if it's not a shutout, I think they should win all the small battles, all the big battles. I think they're going to dominate from start to finish.
The GSHL 3A, while it looks, the past couple of years has looked like a two-horse race, there's a lot of landmines that can trip you up. Yeah. And both Mountain View and Kelso have avoided those last year and through a game or two this year. But you don't want to have that off night against Prairie or Hudson's Bay or Evergreen because they'll make you pay. Yeah. So this is one where if Kelso plays the way they can, it should be one-sided. But you cannot afford to have an off night against any of these GSHL 3A teams.
Well, there's a lot more parity in that league also this year.
For sure.
I think that much is obvious.
Yeah, I think Bay and Evergreen are really, really tough teams this year. That can certainly make some noise and screw things up throughout the division. And I'm sure Kelso is hoping that it's not them and it's Mountain View that slips up. So that's it for us this week. Preps Plus Podcast, episode 19. We'll have episode 20 coming to you next week. Did you think we'd get to 20?
I didn't set goals. I'm not really a person who sets goals. I just kind of like to wallow in mediocrity, and so no, I'm just kidding. Yes, of course.
We have lots of cool stuff. Like follow our daily news channel on YouTube. Subscribe to it. We have a ton of videos coming to you weekly. I think we usually have four a week, probably on average. So definitely subscribe to that. Check us out on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. We got it all. Thanks again to Sterling Auto Group for sponsoring this week's podcast, and we'll see you next week.